days conversations all over COP. Actually, it's been quite interesting because of the water discussions and all the discussions about land degradation. The company was co-founded by myself and Sven Kaufman and addresses three critical global themes. And those themes are climate change, food security, and agricultural regeneration. The problem that we have is that we've got 25% increased population in about 27 years, and we will have to produce between 50 and 70% more food. But how are we going to do that with the demands that we've got on resources when we're facing increased desertification, drought, floods, water and food scarcity, and soil degradation? What Sustainable Planet can do is to allow populations globally to have access to food and to economic systems, to their own bank accounts, basically, and to food and financial security. We grow a nutritious plant protein called the water lentil, and we do this on salt flats or desertified land, on, frankly, any land, where the desert here, as a matter of fact. We've just opened an office in Abu Dhabi. And we can grow this for both human and animal consumption. These photographs are of our framework in Mozambique, where there's up to 6,000, in fact, there's 10,000 hectares of land that is non-arable salt flats. And these have been carved out so that we can roll into as much of this land as we so choose, so long as we are successful as we roll. And on the right-hand side is an example of one of the ponds, which is about 20 to 30 centimeters deep and covered by water lentils and fertilized by chicken manure. No chemicals, but chicken manure. This is an impactful and sustainable superfood. It grows 365 days a year. It doesn't grow in 6-month cropping cycles. It doubles in biomass every 48 hours. It's scalable, it's organic, and it's easy to transport. It creates jobs and food for thousands of subsistence farmers, and it also acts as a carbon sink. It reduces CO2 emissions. It's a big oxygen producer, and it also can produce carbon credits off the back of the company. Other applications are possible, including medicinal and more. This is a superfood. It contains all essential amino acids, vitamins, fiber, omega-3, B12, calcium. It's a long list. And we have strategic relationships now with certain ingredient companies in Europe that are testing and developing products with us. Our business model NIP is starting with the cultivation of the plant itself, and then we extract protein from that plant and create various food products like the ones you just saw, and also carbon credits, which is a business that we will develop. We work with the best agricultural universities around the world, and we have the exclusive global license to create an isolate, a colorless, odorless powder with which we can create a number of different foodstuffs. We work with smallholder farmers as outgrowers, and in so doing, we can pay above average wages to those subsistence farmers, between 3 and 5 times more than they would normally earn. We can provide training, they get better nutrition, and there is crop diversification that is offered by doing this in conjunction with any other food that they're growing. This is one of the few companies that I'm aware of that addresses all of the 17 SDGs. In terms of sustainability and biodiversity, water lentils outperform soya on every single level. Now, we're not looking to replace soya, but soya causes deforestation, which of course we are all trying to stop. So with this, we can use land that is being repurposed. The water use is 15 times less than with soya. The scale is producing 15 times more protein per hectare than soya. The nutritional value is not just about protein, as is soya. It's got many other nutrients. The social impact is much different. There's no carbon footprint here. It's a protein without footprints. There are no chemicals, and we can, with scale, match the price of soya. The management and advisory team is eclectic and global. We have scientific advisors around the world. As I said, we work with various universities, and we all bring unique skill sets to the executive level, from tech to agriculture to finance and emerging markets. We have won a number of awards this year, and our milestones and awards for 2023 are listed. We started the year by being listed as a top Fortune 500 agri-tech company. We then won the Food Tech Challenge here in January out of 667 companies. We then won the UN Food Startup Innovation Award for Better Nutrition. And we then won the Southern African Startup Awards and came top 5 for agri-tech on the continent. We were nominated for the Earthshot Prize last week, and that's for the 2024 Earthshot Prize. And we also showcased our basic foodstuffs at Gulf Foods in Dubai in February. Our Mozambique site is our flagship site, although we have tested this in 8 countries, from India to Thailand to Oman to Egypt, but we have settled on Mozambique for a number of different reasons. And we have trialed it then in 4 different regions of the world, and all successfully, but the plant actually must be in a subtropical or tropical environment to flourish and to give us the kind of yields that we're looking for as a low-cost producer. We're here now at COP28, very graciously and generously on this stand alongside the UNCCD, because we can address issues of desertification and how to overcome these and be adaptable, and also by Microsoft, where we presented recently also. We are investment ready. We are expanding now. We are looking for between $5 and $20 million of investment. Each of our opcos requires $5 million of investment. The model can be franchised, but the returns are very high at 50%, and we can replicate this. So it is highly scalable. With the IP that we have and with the scale of this plant, we can replicate and intend to replicate this across continents. The demand that we see is enormous. We see demand actually that is so big that we can't even begin to touch it, even if we were at full blast. That is how big the demand is for a replacement to soya that is sustainable, because soya has the lion's share of the plant protein market. It is a very large consumer of water, and we are a very minor consumer of water as a starting point. The market now is $30 billion, but is expected to rise to $162 billion, actually, in the next 7 years. And that is about a 550% upside in 7 years. We are basically, I think, the best example that I can find of a nature-based solution, engaging communities and growing protein without footprints. And we believe at Sustainable Planet that we have a game-changing solution to climate change and to food security. And I hope that you hear of us in a year from now in Riyadh and in 2 years from now, and that we are in your neighborhoods, actually, over the next 5 or 10 years. Thank you very much. And with that, can I please invite my panelists to come up and to introduce themselves, Sven, Satya, and Tim. Thank you. Maybe you could sit there, Tim, you're there, and Satya there. If you take that, thank you. Okay, Satya's reputation actually precedes him, but I will have, could each of you please tell us exactly what you do and your organizations so that we are all clear. Thank you.
I am with the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. We're a catalyst based out of New York. We think so big that people think we are half crazy. But half crazy is, we'll take that, because that's still workable. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Tim Rijzo. I'm from the Netherlands, based in Amsterdam. I work with the Plant-Based Treaty. We just had a press conference on our newest report, Safe and Just, and we look and research on the transition to a plant-based food system, because if we don't radically alter the way we are currently producing our food, there's no way we will stay within planetary boundaries. Now, climate change is one planetary boundary that everybody's well aware of, but there are several other planetary boundaries that even if by tomorrow we would stop fossil fuels entirely, we would still not be within the climate goals. So addressing the food system is key, and that's what I'm working on, also within the Dutch government.
Yeah, I'm Sven Kaufmann, co-founder of Susan in Sustainable Planet, and I'm a serial entrepreneur in the tech space. But 9 years ago, I had an epiphany, and I realized I need to connect back to nature, and that's what I did. And due to the process, I also went vegan, and I thought I need to die because I love the meat and all this. So I thought I cannot eat anything anymore, just carrots. But then I also saw how bad soy is. I mean, we need soy, and I don't want to cut down on soy, but the soy production is not sustainable. That's 100% clear. So I came across this wonderful plant, which is called water lentil. Susan has made a wonderful presentation on that. And I realized that a lot of universities and smaller companies are working on water lentils, but no one has really made a commodity out of that. So we try to talk to different universities, and the most important one is Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and they created an isolate from water lentils, but only on lab scale. So no one has done that really in big scale. So we said, okay, let's do that together. And since then, I started the project in Thailand, which we sadly had to stop because of COVID. We couldn't fly there anymore, so that was a little bit a problem. And then Susan said, let's go to Mozambique, and I'm very happy there because we got 10,000 hectare of land, possible land, and the land is a non-agricultural land. They can't grow anything on that land. And that is fantastic for our plant because the soil is like clay. We don't need any foil. We can just put water, dig a hole, put water in the ground, and we can grow the plant. And that is fantastic because we can create thousands of jobs, and we can help the community. We are engaging smallholder farmer, so it depends on the size of the family. We give them 1 to 3 hectares of land, we train them, we give them technical support, and then we are also the off-taker for them. So we want to expand now, as Susan said, and yeah, hand over to you, Susan.
Okay, I think to kick off, I was this morning at a presentation at Satya's stand, the company stand, which is the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet, really captivating series of speakers. And you are really at the cutting edge of innovations, and you see trends and innovations all the time. What do you think we should focus on in the most urgently to address the climate crisis? I know this is Food Day, but from all that you see, where do you think the greatest focus should be?
I think 5 things that need to happen, and that's why the Global Alliance has 250 member organizations, including Sustainable Planet. So the 5 things that need to happen are these. The first is, so we focused for 30 years on mitigation. This is like putting the cart before the horse. If we focused on adaptation 30 years ago, actually we would have had adaptation. We would have fortified ourselves with great ideas, and we would also have mitigation, because adaptation actually gets you mitigation. Quick example, people get very excited about electric vehicles. The first set of electric vehicles were actually operating already on the roads in 1920. That was more than 100 years ago. Fossil fuels killed the potential of electric vehicles because we found something and we thought, this is cool stuff. And so we didn't go for, of course, those were lead acid batteries. But imagine if EVs had a 100-year run by now, where we would be in that technology. For example, if you take the solar industry, 20 years ago, they were selling for $30 a kilowatt hour. Now in the developing world, forget the developed world, in the developing world, from my own country, India, it actually public auctions, it's under $3 with no subsidies. That's what markets do. And I could go on and on with several things that have happened and similar impact, 10 years, 15 years. Runtime, it's a very different scenario you're looking at it right now. That's the first thing, that we really need to focus on adaptation. And while we're talking about adaptation, the food systems, the second thing is food systems. It's the most important thing to adapt. I have been speaking at multiple events today and attending as well. The big issue is soil. For soil to be productive, it needs to have 2.5 to 3% soil organic carbon. Otherwise, it's dirt, it's not soil. So in most parts of the world, it's under 0.5% now. That's what we have done to our soil. So we need to bring back soil health. And that is only possible through natural farming, through regenerative agriculture. And people question the science of, they say, oh, you're going to starve if you're not using fertilizers and pesticides. I can't think anything more disingenuous than that, because we have a history of 10,000 years of food production without nitrates, phosphates, and phosphorus. That's only the last 70 years. And so you have to be completely disingenuous to even suggest that the last 10,000 years of food systems and technology is all nothing because we found some special thing in the last 70 years, and that's how we've destroyed soil fertility. The aquifers have gone dry, groundwater is available at 200, 300 feet. That's the result. So we, as quickly as possible, we need to switch to regenerative agriculture. That's the second thing. The third thing is that waste. Humans produce waste of a magnitude even we haven't seen before. Animals don't produce waste. Animals don't kill anybody to store food for the next 6 months. They kill to survive. They are in the food chain, so of course they kill, but they kill to survive, not to store food for the next 6 months, next 12 months. We do that. And then we throw them away because the label just ran out on us. Because we thought we were going to consume it and we didn't. And so that's the most important thing, waste. So in waste, it's not just food waste. It's electronic waste. It's the batteries that need to be recycled. The plastic that needs to be recycled. The total weight of the human biomass on the planet is only 300 million tons. We produce more plastic than that every year and recycle only 9% of it. We have produced 9 billion tons of plastic since plastic became mainstream. So that's the next thing. Then the one after is partnerships. We have to have partnerships of a caliber and of a magnitude we've never done before. We don't collaborate. I coordinated the world's largest disaster recovery program. I was the UN recovery coordinator for the tsunami, the Boxing Day tsunami, $8 billion. Everybody, and you know what, the only lesson I learned among many, but the most important one, everybody loves coordination, no one likes to be coordinated. Oh, you coordinate everybody else, don't talk to me. Or everybody likes coordination or the value it brings, nobody wants to pay for it. So when I would go, the office I was heading, the UN Office of the Recovery Coordinator, when I would go raising money, I have $8 billion actually to deploy, but that's not for coordination. That's for building a house, building a road, building an airport, building a seaport, building thousands of schools, primary health centers, nothing for coordination. You talk to somebody about coordination, oh, we've already given you a lot of money. But if I don't coordinate, you will have crappy houses that will collapse next time the earthquake strikes. You won't have common standards for all the stakeholders. There were 1,200 organizations. If they are building houses, they don't know what is the standard. How do you do that without coordination? So we have to build virtuous partnerships of a scale, and that requires us to be a little less selfish, to think that there are things bigger than us, better than us, more important than us. And the last thing is money. All the coordination, all the ideas mean nothing if you do not have money. So we have to build the kind of bridges that there are champions like Sustainable Planet and thousands like them who have great ideas with significant potential. Then there's the world of money sitting here that really wants to deploy money. Last year, the global GDP was $105 trillion. If just even 1% moved in the direction of sustainability-focused investments or climate-focused investments, that's more than $1 trillion. That can actually change the world like this. But the connectivity is simply not there. The people with money do not have the patience to sit with them and assume that risk. And they, no matter how hard they try, cannot get the attention of these guys. So you need to build an ecosystem that is actually the bridge from a wish list to prosperity. So those are the 5 things, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, I was in a, that's very interesting. I was in a panel discussion this morning, and the question that was asked was, what is going to push food system transformation? And the point that you raised is so accurate, because the answer was, this can all be as perfect as you want, but the transformation is going to come when the private sector steps in and gets rewarded financially. There's an economic cost to this, and there's a reward that is necessary. And that was quite brutal, but true, actually. I think that there has to be a reward when there are investments in companies like this. And this company has a very high IRR, but the bottom line is that investors are not going to come in unless there is, at scale, unless there is some kind of return. Regeneration, Sven, the regeneration point is a really good one. How can you talk about, or can you talk about Sustainable Planet and its ability to regenerate the land?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, for example, in Mozambique, we got this 10,000 hectare of land, and this land got polluted by salt. Nothing is growing there. And the beauty of this plant is over time it takes out the salt, and we can hand over the land back to the government. So it's a process, will take 1, 2, 3 years, depends on the amount of salt, but that's really wonderful, and that is really important for these kind of areas where nothing else is growing.
Yeah, regeneration is such a strong theme, and working on deserted lands or working on desertified lands has become, well, obviously massive in this region, but it's something that was a huge focus today. Tim, on behalf of Plant-Based Treaty, you see a lot of trends in the market. What are the biggest obstacles that you are seeing to having a more widely embraced plant protein diet?
Yeah, well, I think there's many obstacles at play. Financial, ideological, governmental. But just to give a bit of a context of the Netherlands, for example. The Netherlands is, after the US, it's the second biggest exporter of agricultural products in the world, even though it's such a tiny country. So we in the Netherlands are quite famous for our agricultural innovation. But there is a point where your success can become your demise. Now, what I mean by that is that our livestock system has been made so much more efficient that it's literally destroying our nature. And the EU actually said nitrogen levels have to be brought down immediately. That's been on the table for a while now. Governments have, keep failing on this particular topic. The last government actually announced a 25 billion euro package of public taxpayers' money to buy out animal farmers, because the goal was to reduce livestock by 50% in the Netherlands. Also important to mention is that the Netherlands is the country in the world with the most animals per square kilometer and per head of the capita. So there's no country anywhere else in the world that has a higher density of livestock animals in the world. Now, obviously, this policy of buying out farmers with huge public taxpayers' money was met with a lot of resistance, both from the public, because you basically just, it's purely capital destruction. And the animal farmers also didn't like it, because they would just be bought out, and it was also a kind of a great sign of disrespect, because for decades, animal farmers have been told to scale up, scale up, scale up. Most of the small farmers didn't manage to do that. And now, when all these animal industries became so vast, the government is telling them, well, you know what, you're actually fucking up the whole environment, you're destroying, you're polluting, nitrogen levels are too high, ammonia levels are too high, we're gonna buy you out. The government actually fell quite recently, so now it's a problem that is unsolved. And so this is a major obstacle right now in the Netherlands. To come back to your question, the problems regarding moving away from livestock, I think as a culture we have been very attached to our livestock system and our heavily animal dependent diet. Whereas in other sectors we are actually not really against innovation. So it's a bit weird where that's coming from, because if you think of whaling, for example, the Dutch were very big in whaling. But when the electric light bulb was invented, whaling became unnecessary anymore. You didn't need to kill whales anymore for the oil. The oil was used to lighten European cities for hundreds of years. So with the electric light bulb, whales became unnecessary as a resource. Now, horses have become redundant in most parts of the world as a source for transportation. Pigeons used to be our means of communication. We've replaced that with mobile phones. But when it comes to our food, there is a big cultural resilience to accepting that, wait a second, maybe we can also innovate our way out of animal-based foods. In fact, we need to do this. Now, why I'm so optimistic is that once you get people to understand that, wait a second, innovation can also be applied to this sector, a lot of things are possible. The Netherlands are leading in cellular agriculture, which is of course a very high-tech innovation of cell-based meat replacement of conventional animal foods, but also other plant-based innovations. 10 years ago there was only dairy milks in the big retailers in the Netherlands. Now you have oat milk, you have rice milk, you have almond milk, soy milk, you have new bean varieties that they milk high protein density milk of. And companies such as Sustainable Planet, they are the reason for me being so excited in these particular type of innovations, is they provide farmers an alternative away from animal farming into a different type of plant-based farming that they can make a living off. Because in the end, farmers are businessmen. You know, I've spoken to many people working in the livestock industry. It's not that they have some kind of they don't want to switch, but they want to make sure there's money and that they are not the only risk takers in this endeavor. And with the protein isolate that Sustainable Planet produces, you can add this to bars, you can add this to milks, and well, I think it was also on the slides, all of the range of products that could be used to fortify plant-based foods. So yeah, the obstacles, they're definitely policy making obstacles, because if the government would be more supportive of helping farmers transition, I think you would have a lot more public support and a lot more support from the animal farmers. I think there's also, again, a lot of, call it cultural or ideological obstacles, because people are just very resistant to trying out plant-based products. And then obviously the private sector I think it is growing. It's not growing fast enough. And a big obstacle for private sector going into the plant-based sphere is not a level playing field. So in the Netherlands, we have just had a new policy announced that all plant-based milks will get an additional tax, and dairy is actually getting subsidies. Now, if we translate this policy to the mobility sector, it would be if you buy a petroleum car, you would get a subsidy, but if you buy an electric vehicle, you would have to pay extra. So it's actually, because of the livestock lobby is unfortunately very, very strong and has vested interests, they are inhibiting a lot of, same as Satya mentioned with the electric vehicle, they are inhibiting a lot of progress in this field, because obviously the plant-based milks take a lot less land and fresh water to be produced, yet they are, for the consumer, for the end consumer, they are a lot more expensive.
I actually
just want to add something because yeah, it's not all about meat or plant-based. The big problem is we need 50 to 70% more food. More food is more protein, and it's not strawberries and cakes. So the main protein source today is animal protein. We also need to feed the animals. 90% of the animal feed is soybean. That means we need to grow 50 to 70% more soybean to feed the world with proteins from animals. That's not possible. There's no agricultural land to grow 50 to 70% more soybean. So that's why we need to find alternative protein sources. It's not only cutting down on meat. Sure, we have the methane problems and so on, but we need to find alternative protein sources. People are looking into insect protein, vertical farming, but we believe the future is plant-based. Why it is plant-based? Because, for example, this plant has 45% of protein. If I feed it directly to a human, he has 45% of protein. If I feed it to a chicken, then the chicken gets the 45% of protein, but we get only 15% back from the chicken meat. So we are losing 2/3 of that protein, And coming back to what I said, we need 50 to 70% more protein. We are running into this protein shortage, and no one knows how we can solve that. That's the truth.
But the question also is, what is the role of the farmer? I mean, the role of the farmer, I think, is transforming right in front of our eyes, actually. Seriously, farmers today are going to be the hedge fund managers of the next decade. They are the ones that hold the power. And the interesting thing is, what we ask of farmers is food. What we don't say is, you are the guardians of the earth, you are the guardians of the soil, you are very important to us, and you deserve our full support. That is not what we say to farmers. And speaking as a farmer, and I own 2 large farms in Africa, it is a very uncomfortable position to be in. And there are millions of farmers that would say exactly the same thing. So I think that the whole role of farming and how we actually view farming is going to morph into something dramatically different in 10 years than it is today. In any case, looking at nature-based solutions, Satya, the UNEP said this morning, the head of the UNEP said this morning that he thought that $180 billion could flow into nature-based solutions between now and 2030. $180 billion, which I did a double take on. What do you think is going to draw money into nature-based solutions that is going to accelerate this, and this being a nature-based solution? So I'm all ears.
I don't think that kind of money will flow absent the enabling conditions. I actually think, or I know that we need $1.4 trillion for nature-based solutions for that to have a significant impact on people and planet. So 180 billion is small change compared to what we actually need. But the challenge is not that the money is not there, as I mentioned earlier. The challenge is that people that have money, they still aren't at a place or a point of time in their heads where they'll throw money at anything. It happens. It has happened in history many a times. When the entire system is collapsing, people throw money at everything. Go back to 2008. I'm not talking about medieval history. I'm talking about 2008. How much money went into bailing out trillion-dollar companies? How quickly did we do that? Go back to 2020. Just recently, COVID. How quickly the quantitative easing and all the tools in the toolkit of a central banker, how quickly we found the trillions. So it's not like governments don't have money or governments aren't able to deploy at speed. They just think they are hedging. They just think that somebody else is going to solve their problem. Unfortunately for them, Mother Nature is very giving and caring and everything you can think of, generous, but it's also ruthless when it comes to paying back. We've seen that with the floods, the storms, the all kinds of problems. My wife teaches at an institution called the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Madras is not a place where you see floods, actually. So a few days ago, they had catastrophic cyclone. And they actually had to use boats inside the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, to evacuate families that are on ground floor. So this is not something to be taken lightly. It's happening at scale. If you look at the Caribbean, they used to have once 100-year cyclones and hurricanes and all, not cyclones. And now they're having them every 10 years. Look at the Indonesian forest fires of 2015. And look at, they lost more than 6 million acres of land, forest land, just burned to cinders. Look at the United States. The numbers vary a little every year, but on an average, the United States is losing 5 million acres of forest estate every year. And fact check me. I'm not trying to get you all worked up with funny data. Please fact check me. Then that will perhaps put some fear of God in all our heads as to what is happening. That's the scale at which the fabric of life is disintegrating. So we need to find the money. and we need to find it fast. And the only thing that can save us is going back to nature, saying, we are sorry, we're a terribly arrogant species. Out of 8 million, we are just one, and we understand our mistakes. We just want to make amends. And then we'll be fine, actually. Then we'll act. Because every scientist you look at, every thought leader, every philosopher throughout history, what has it taught us? You solve a problem by accepting a problem. You accept, I have a problem. That's the basic starting point. If you don't have a problem, there's nothing to solve. We have an existential problem. And so we need to find the money. And actually, we are working right now. There's a saying in Africa, small mouth, big talk. So it might sound like that. But if we had our way, we will unlock $1 trillion in investment in nature in the next 15 years. That's what we are working towards. And some of the biggest players are coming together around the idea. I'm not suggesting they're the only ones that will do this, but we signed an agreement with a company called Federated Hermes, which is one of the world's largest asset managers. They manage $715 billion in assets. They're just the first of many. As much as I'm excited about the agreement we signed with them and launched here on the 2nd of December at this COP, but I'm hopeful that they are just the first of many, because we need to rally as many as possible, and we need to unlock finance for nature-based solutions at a scale never seen before. So if you have an idea, you should be able to get money to make that idea a reality. And so that's the only thing that will make it happen at scale, Susan.
Thank you. Let's talk about water. There have been multiple sessions today about water. In fact, the UN chair of water said this morning in a ministerial session that the planet loses 1 cubic kilometer of water every year, which is equivalent to 6 years of rainfall. It's massive. And so we're looking for solutions that use extremely little water. And Sustainable Planet does use extremely little water to grow protein at scale. Can you talk about water, Sven, and the amount that is used in cultivating plant protein, and certainly this plant protein?
Yeah, that was one of the big things which annoyed me, especially when it comes to soybean production. You need so much water because you give water to the soybeans. Most of the water anyway goes into the ground with all the fertilizer, cause all the problems in the groundwater, later in the ocean. And on the other hand, most of the water goes into the stem and into the leaves, not into the bean. So in our case, with the water lentil, we control the water. The water lentil is in a controlled environment, and all the water goes into the plant, and we are recycling 95% of the water. That means we are using 15 to 20 times less water than soybean production. And that is really relevant here in the region, in the Middle East, in Abu Dhabi, where we made some tests, but also in Saudi, and also in Africa, as you know. I mean, water is a big topic. And on the other hand, we can use all kind of water. We can use brackish water, we can use gray water, in certain amounts also wastewater. The plant also survives in high saline water, so that is another big opportunity for us. We can mix salt water to the water because the plant grows faster when it has a certain amount of salt.
Yeah, and in terms of actual volume of water, just to put this into context with data, to create 1 kilo of soya protein requires 5,882 liters of water. To create 1 kilo of water lentil protein uses 367 liters of water. So that's just under 6,000 liters and just over 350 liters. That gives you some idea of the scale of water usage. And water is a very important resource for us. So that's actually quite an interesting statistic. Tim, in carbon, let's talk about carbon emissions. In the plant protein, in your company and in what you see in terms of trends, what interest are you seeing in carbon trading, carbon credits? Are you seeing any of that in Holland and elsewhere?
Yeah, a good question, and it also relates to something I actually wanted to tap in on what you just mentioned about re-envisioning the role of what farmers can do, and it's maybe also interesting to mention that farmers could actually become big players in carbon sequestration. Now, what I mean with that is, first of all, the bio-based economy is something that's going to be very big in the coming decades. Now, a new type of farming that is really getting popular in the Netherlands is these animal barns. They take the animals out and they start growing elephant grass. Now, why they start growing elephant grass? Elephant grass is a grass that sequestrates carbon, but it's also an essential ingredient for bio-based economy. So this is, again, farmers having been able to produce food. Maybe farmers in the future will become main producers of building materials. Secondly, on November the 13th, there was a report published by the European Commission on applying the European trading system, so it's called the ETS carbon trading system, onto agriculture. And again, the farmers that would then invest into crop farming that would sequester carbon would actually also get an additional income because of their addition to enlarging the carbon sink. So
That's important, though. I think farmers have to get rewarded if they're going to take action that is going to do something that is a climate initiative that is going to be helpful. I think there has to be reward here, and this actually is what changes the role of the farmer and gives them much more power and authority and frankly, funding to do something that is going to reward them as well for all of us.
Yeah, and currently I work with several organizations that help livestock farmers transition to either plant-based farming for human consumption, for building materials. I work with one in Texas, one in UK, and one in Switzerland. Now, especially the organization in Switzerland has helped 140 animal farmers transition to plant-based farming. And most of the farmers are incredibly happy because, as you know, in the context of fossil fuels, a lot of fossil fuel assets are actually going to be stranded assets. Now, talking about the Netherlands, most of the animal farmers have nowhere near repaid their debt. Yeah, because these systems they have to buy, these are laboratory systems. You have endless, cages of gestation grades with all kinds of liquids. It's very much advanced technology. So they have nowhere near repaid these facilities. So it could very well be that they become stranded assets. Now, unfortunately, the most common repurposing that's being applied in the Netherlands right now of animal farms is that the drug cartels approach them and help them transition to narcotic production. Now, this is, of course, a very sad conclusion. That what the government is failing to provide in terms of an alternative for farmers, actually the criminals are able to provide. I think this is a clear sign that we are failing in providing farmers with profitable alternatives, because for so many decades they have been told by government to scale up. A lot of farmers, especially in the Netherlands, around the 60s, a lot of farmers committed suicide because they didn't want to participate in this transition to factory holding of animals for a number of reasons. And now the ones that are in this system are also very much struggling with very marginal profits because most of the profit ends up in the chain. So it's the big feeding companies and it's the big retailers that actually are profiting from the scaling and not so much the farmers. And I think that's why collaborating with animal farmers and approaching them not as the culprit of the problem, but as also as victims of a decades-long failed policy is key to working together and to make farming a sustainable, respectable endeavor again.
Yeah. Policy is the heart of all of this too. Policy has such a huge role, and lobbying policymakers is vital. Before we close this session, I'd like to know whether you have any questions from the floor from any of the panel. Go ahead.
I'm curious about the value chain of these. What are the lentils? Do you already have Hi, I'm curious about the value chain of these water lentils. Do you already have processors to create foodstuffs, or what happens once they're grown?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a whole silver plate, starting from animal feed, which we don't like so much, but it's a huge demand, especially here in the region. So it can be used as chicken feed or fish feed. We have created pellets for cows. The beauty is the methane emission goes down by feeding cows with water lentil pellets. It can be also pet food. We have discussions with a huge company about pet food right now. They're making some tests as we speak. And then it can be used for humans, similar to soy. Soy can be used for animals and for humans as well. It's a different process. You need to sterilize the product. But at the end of the day, yeah, we have some bars later, energy bars, which we have produced. So that is something we launched at Gulf Food in February this year. We have created supplement powder that's for the vegan, vegetarian, health-conscious people. Fitness people, bodybuilders, etc. We have produced pasta from water lentils, bread, and then we have also created a concentrate. So at the moment, the plant has 40 to 45% of protein. We increased that to 65, but it's still greenish and has a small flavor and a small smell. But it's okay. It's not comparable with spirulina or chlorella, which is really strong and intense. But we have also created a so-called isolate. There we increase the amount to 75% of protein, and that is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. And with that, you can produce your plant-based meat, your plant-based milk, and all the other products we were talking about here, who are important for the transition to a plant-based diet.
Go ahead. Actually, yeah, this lady. No, you go ahead. You were first. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much. I think this is a very interesting session for me. I have 3 questions. The first one has to do with what is an isotope, because you said I think this came from an isotope. Is it
Isolate.
Isolate
is a
so I
powder.
want to understand is this a plant? Where did it come from? I didn't get that from the very beginning.
The isolate is an extraction of the plant. So using the red plant, comes in a few machines, and then you have this powder, which is odorless, colorless, tasteless. It's called isolate.
Okay. Second question is, it replicates quite fast. To what extent can this become an invasive species, long term? The third question is, what are the everything has a benefit and a challenge. What are the side effects or the challenges that come with this type of plant? Thank you.
Yeah, regarding invasive species, you're right. It can be, but normally in a normal ecosystem, you have fish. Fish is eating the plant. Fish is regulating that plant everywhere. But yes, you're absolutely right. You need to control the water lentils. That's why we have controlled environments. We test the water, etc. So from that regard, it's absolutely safe. We haven't found any negative aspect, to be honest. We analyzed everything from A to Z. The only negative event right now is that we can't get funding for this, or very little funding, because we are in this greenfield phase. And when we talk to the big organizations, they normally put in 50, 100 million and so on. We are not there yet. So we are looking for 5 million, and that is not easy. And Susan can explain that maybe better in detail. But it's really hard to get $5 million for a project in Mozambique. If you go to a food tech investor in the Silicon Valley or whatever, in Berlin, in Germany, they will not invest in a project in Mozambique. If you invent a new whatever energy bar with certain new ingredients in Europe, they will invest. Or you invent a new burger. That's what they are used to. But when you come with this risk, political risk, and so on, for this kind of countries, it's really hard for us right now.
Having said that, we're in advanced talks with a number of funders, and I think it's worth saying that there are groups that are interested in investing in us in Singapore and in other parts of the world. We're quite dedicated to the African model, and the reason is that it frankly is uplifts all boats. It is something that can engage hundreds of subsistence farmers. The benefit to subsistence farmers is that we can employ literally with multiple models thousands of subsistence farmers and pay them substantially more than they would otherwise earn. And the benefit for us is that it's a low-cost model. So it's a win-win for all, because we want to keep our costs down, and we don't want to get trapped in the, when we've seen this before by another player, that was trapped in a kind of a CapEx downfall. And we don't want that. We want to keep this as natural as possible on land that we showed you with this low-cost model, drying the raw material by solar. So we have solar trays currently. I mean, we're talking, we use nature. It is a nature-based solution 100% until we get to the isolate, and then it becomes something different. And if we take that somewhere else, our costs go up. Our costs go up dramatically in Canada with labor. Our costs go up dramatically elsewhere for different reasons, but our costs will go up. So that model suits us on a high impact level. Any other questions?
How much of the revenue is coming from carbon credits versus food products?
It's too early to say because we've just started to create revenues in the last year. So as Sven referred, we're selling to chicken and fish farmers locally. And so our revenues are low, and we will not be able to scale up to a high enough level to create carbon credits until we are funded, until we are better funded.
In the Excel model,
Yeah.
the business.
Oh, yes,
No,
yes, yes,
there are
absolutely,
no
yeah.
carbon credits in the model. That's just purely based on the food. We need to make a carbon methodology for the plant. No one has done that yet. We kicked off the project now with another group because, yeah, you need a third party to do that. It's very interesting because the carbon credits are linked to SDGs. So as more SDGs you are supporting, as higher the carbon credit value can be, and we are supporting all SDGs. So I'm curious what will be the outcome, but it will be a high-end carbon credit for sure.
We haven't factored into any of our financial modeling the carbon credits, the medicinal side, the cosmetic side, the biochar. I mean, there's a whole series of different businesses that could flourish on the back of this initial food production that we have.
And how much money has already gone into the venture?
A prize money that we've won. We've thankfully won lots of prize money. So we're kind of, I think that's what you call what you kill, you eat. Well, what we kill, we eat. And friends and family and prize money. But I think we expect to start scaling quite rapidly over the next 6 months.
Thank you.
Anyway, I think just a last word from all the panelists in literally a few words, a minute or less. Can you tell the audience what your view is of what you expect to happen before the next COP? Are you looking forward to the next COP? Are you feeling enthusiastic for the next COP? What do you expect before the COP in Riyadh in 2024?
Okay, let me start. I'm really looking forward to the one in Riyadh because it's our topic. And I think in 12 months, we as a company, we have created several solutions. I'm really looking positive into the future. As Susan said, we have several options right now. But yeah, it takes time, especially in the agriculture sector, investment sector. Everything is slow. It's not like in the Silicon Valley where you knock on a door and you get your check in a few weeks. It's not like that. So it takes some time, but yeah, in 12 months we are definitely in a different stage.
Tim?
Yeah, well, 12 months is short, but I think we will just progress on the trend that we're seeing. Same as when you know the coal companies said the solar is never going to be on price parity with coal. All of a sudden, solar energy actually became cheaper. I think in the beginning, you know, it's always you always have to deal with higher costs in the beginning market, in the beginning industry. Once you start to scale up, actually price goes down. In the beginning, plant-based products in the Netherlands were really priced. There was a premium you had to pay. I paid it proudly, but others it was too much of a burden. Now the two major retailers that we have in the Netherlands, Jumbo and Albert Heijn, They have both now started their own plant-based range of products, and they've actually both committed that they will be on price parity with all the animal-based equivalents. So let's say you
That's
have
amazing,
yeah.
actually.
So
didn't know that.
yeah, so whether it's oat milk, 1 liter of oat milk cannot be more expensive than the cheapest liter of cow's milk. Whether it's for on your bread, plant-based cheese should not be more expensive than the cheapest cheese, dairy-based alternative. And I think really that is gonna accelerate just the overall adoption of plant-based products among consumers, but it will also then attract a lot more private capital into this, into these developing or these newly emerging markets. So
That's great. Thank you. Satya, in a couple of minutes.
I just booked my hotels in Baku, Azerbaijan. So, well, that's where it is happening.
Oh.
The next COP. That's another one. Yeah.
You're talking
The
about
next
two
one is
different COPs.
the next
What's
one
the
is
COP?
Baku, Azerbaijan. That's where the next COP is happening. And now it's you better book your rooms as well, because it's a place with not many hotel rooms like Dubai. So, no, humor aside, these things don't produce anything intergovernmentally speaking. And I was on the other side. I was in the kitchen, so I know what I'm talking. Because it's built, the conversation is built around a naming and shaming and blaming exercise without focusing on the prize. And the prize is saving the species, saving the humans. And so we'll keep doing that because we don't learn lessons. And so I don't have much hope from the intergovernmental process. They'll do stuff, there'll be incremental things happening, little things here and there, and they'll put up hope, the loss and damage fund. There's hope because it started with a £2 billion contribution from Scotland in Glasgow, and now it's $500 million. But is it going to scale at that rate? It won't. We know that for a fact, because the Green Climate Fund hasn't scaled, the Global Environment Facility hasn't scaled, the climate investment funds haven't scaled, the $100 billion that was promised to happen by every year by 2020, cumulatively it hasn't happened as yet. So I have no hope that that's going to happen. But is it useful? Yes, of course it is useful. It sets some principles that we can all use to advance the cause. What does happen at an exponential scale is all of us coming together and meeting each other, understanding each other, building partnerships, and that makes a lot of things happen. I think that's what I'm very hopeful about, and that's why I'm looking forward to the COP. We ourselves as an organization, we hope to have, before that, worst case then, open the doors of the World Climate and Nature Guarantee Facility before that. We also hope to have a $1 billion regenerative agriculture lending facility up and running by then. And we will move at a scale that we need to move to make a difference. Otherwise, it's just talk. Small mouth, big talk. Thank you.
That is good news. $1 billion, my goodness, $1 billion regenerative agri lending facility.
And
so,
that in the
no,
next part.
I'm going to hold you to that. I think actually we've got to wrap up. But the COP that I was referring to is the land desertification COP in the UNCCD COP. Yeah, exactly. I actually feel positive that land is becoming much more of a focus, and desertification and land climate mitigation, but climate adaptation is becoming a huge focus on land, using land just in this way. So I'm very, very positive. And I do agree with you. I think bringing us all together, even if it doesn't tick every box and we don't leave here feeling like this was a perfect COP, the raising of awareness in the way that it does and the bringing together of so many like-minded people has got to create this energy that creates change. So there is nothing but positivity that comes out of something just like this. Thank you very much.